Chapter 6 What the Hermit Knew Lucky had seen few such luxurious rooms, even on earth. It was 30 feet long, 20 wide, and 30 high. A balcony circled it. Above and below the walls were lined with book films. A wall projector was set on a pedestal, while on another was a gem-like model of the galaxy. The lighting was entirely indirect. As soon as he set foot in the room, he felt the tug of pseudo-grav motors. It wasn't set at Earth normal. From the feel of it, it seemed somewhere between Earth and Mars normal. There was a delightful sensation of lightness, and yet enough pull to allow full muscular coordination. The hermit had removed his spacesuit and suspended it over a white plastic trough, into which the frost had collected thickly over it when they stepped out of the frozen space, and into the warm, moist air of the room might trickle as it melted. He was tall and straight. His face was pink and unlined, but his hair was quite white, as were his bushy eyebrows, and the veins stood out on the back of his hands. He said politely, "May I help you with your suit?" Lucky came to life. "That's all right." He clammed out quickly. "This is an unusual place you have here." "You like it?" Hansen smiled. "It took many years to make it look like this. Nor is this all there is to my little home." He seemed filled with a quiet pride. "I imagine so," said Lucky. "There must have been a power plant for light and heat as well to keep the pseudograv field alive. You must have an air purifier and replacer, water supplies, food stores, all that." "That's right." "A hermit's life is not bad." The hermit was obviously both proud and pleased. "It doesn't have to be," he said. "Sit down, William, sit down. Would you like a drink?" "No, thank you." Lucky lowered himself into an armchair. Its apparently normal seat and back masked a soft diametric magnetic field that gave under his weight only so far, then achieved a balance that molded itself to every curve of his body. "Unless you can scare up a cup of coffee?" "Easily." The old man stepped into an alcove. In seconds he was back with a fragrant steaming cup, plus a second for himself. The armchair of Lucky's chair unfolded into a narrow ledge at the proper touch of Hansen's toe, and the hermit set down one cup into an appropriate recess. As he did so, he paused to stare up at the younger man. Lucky looked up. "Yes?" Hansen shook his face. "Nothing, nothing." They faced one another. The lights in the more distant parts of the larger room faded until only the area immediately surrounding the two men was clear to vision. "And now, if you'll pardon an old man's curiosity," said the hermit, "I'd like to ask you why you've come here." "I didn't come. I was brought," said Lucky. "You mean you're not one of—" Hansen paused. "No, I'm not a pirate. At least, not yet." Hansen put down his cup and looked troubled. "I don't understand. Perhaps I've said things I shouldn't have." "Don't worry about it. I'm going to be one of them soon enough." Lucky finished his coffee and then, choosing his words carefully, began with his boarding of the Atlas on the moon and carried through to the moment. Hansen listened in absorption. "And are you sure this is what you want to do, young man? That you've seen a little of what the life is like?" "I'm sure." "Why, for Earth's sake?" "Exactly, for the sake of Earth and what it did to me. It's no place to live. Why did you come out here?" "It's a long story, I'm afraid. You needn't look alarmed. I won't tell it. I bought this asteroid long ago as a place for small vacations, and I grew to like it. I kept enlarging the room space, bought furniture and book films from Earth little by little. Eventually I found I had all I needed here. So why not stay here permanently? I asked myself. And then I did stay here permanently." "Sure, why not? You're smart. Back there it's a mess. Too many people, too many rut jobs, next to impossible to get out to the planets, and if you do, it's a job of manual labor. No opportunity for a man anymore unless he comes to the asteroids. I'm not old enough to settle down like you, but for a young man it's a free life and an exciting one. There's room to be boss. And the ones who are already boss don't like young fellows with boss notions in their head. Anton, for instance. I've seen him and know him." "Maybe, but so far he's kept his word," said Lucky. "He said if I came out winner over this dingo, I'd have my chance to join the men of the Asteroids. It looks as though I'm getting the chance."
"It looks as though you're here, that's all. What if he returns with proof, or what he calls proof, that you're a government man?"
"He won't."
"And if he does, just to get rid of you?"
Lucky's face darkened, and again Hansen looked at him curiously, frowning a bit. Lucky said, "He wouldn't. He can use a good man and he knows it. Besides, why are you preaching to me? You're out here yourself playing ball with them."
Hansen looked down. "It's true, I shouldn't interfere with you. It's just that, being alone here so long, I'm apt to talk too much when a person does come along, just to hear the sound of voices. Look, it's about time for dinner. I would be glad to have you eat with me in silence, or if you'd rather, or else we'll talk about anything you choose."
"Well, thanks, Mr. Hansen. No hard feelings."
"Good."
Lucky followed Hansen through a door into a small pantry lined with canned food and concentrates of all sorts. None of the brand names familiar to Lucky were represented. Instead, the contents of each can were described in brightly colored etchings that were themselves integral parts of the metal.
Hansen said, "I used to keep fresh meat in a special freeze room. Can get the temperature down all the way on an asteroid, you know, but it's been 2 years since you get that kind of supplies." He chose half a dozen cans off the shelves, plus a container of milk concentrate.
At his suggestion, Lucky took up a sealed gallon container of water from a lower shelf. The hermit set the table quickly. The cans were of the self-heating type that opened up into dishes with enclosed cutlery. Hansen said, with some amusement, indicating the cans,
"I've got a whole valley on the outside brim-filled with these things. Discarded ones, that is. A 20 years' accumulation."
The food was good, but strange. It was yeast-based material, the kind only the terrestrial empire produced. Nowhere else in the galaxy was the pressure of population so great, the billions of people so numerous, that yeast culture had been developed. On Venus, where most of the yeast products were grown, almost any variety of food imitation could be produced. Steaks, nuts, butter, candy. It was as nourishing as the real thing, too. To Lucky, however, the taste was not quite Venusian. There was a sharper tang to it. "Pardon me for being nosy," he said, "but all this takes money, doesn't it?"
"Oh, yes, and I have some. I have investments on Earth, quite good ones. My checks are always honored, or at least they were until not quite 2 years ago."
"What happened then?"
"The supply ships stopped coming. Too risky on account of the pirates. It was a bad blow. I had a good backlog of supplies in most things, but I can imagine how it must have been for the others."
"The others?"
"The other hermits. There are hundreds of us. They're not all as lucky as I am. Very few can afford to make their worlds quite this comfortable, but they can manage the essentials. It's usually old people like myself, with wives dead, children grown up, the world strange and different, who go off by themselves. If they have a little nest egg, they can get a little asteroid started. The government doesn't charge. Any asteroid you want to settle on, if it's less than 5 miles in diameter, is yours. Then, if they want, they can invest in a sub-etheric receiver and keep up with the universe. If not, they can have book films, or can arrange to have news transcripts brought in by the supply ships once a year. Or they can just eat, rest, sleep, and wait to die if they'd rather. I wish sometimes I'd got to know some of them."
"Why haven't you?"
"Sometimes I felt willing, but they're not easy people to know. After all, they've come here to be alone. And, for that matter, so have I."
"Well, what did you do when the supply ships stopped coming?"
"Nothing at first. I thought surely the government would clean up the situation. I had enough supplies for months. In fact, I could have skimmed along for a year, maybe. But then the pirate ships came."
"And you threw in with them?"
The hermit shrugged. His eyebrows drew together in a troubled frown, and they finished their meal in silence. At the end he gathered the canned plates and cutlery and placed them in a wall container in the alcove that led to the pantry.
Lucky heard a dim grating noise of metal on metal that diminished rapidly. Hansen said, "The pseudograph field doesn't extend to the disposal tube. A puff of air and they sail out to the valley I told you of, even though it's nearly a mile away." "It seems to me," said Lucky, "that if you'd try a little harder puff you'd get rid of the cans altogether."
So I would. I think most hermits do that. Maybe they all do. I don't like the idea, though. It's a waste of air and of metal, too. We might reclaim those cans some day. Who knows? Besides, even though most of the cans would scatter here and there, I'm sure that some would circle this asteroid like little moons, and it's undignified to think of being accompanied on your orbit by our garbage. Care to smoke? No? Mind if I do?"
He lit a cigar and with a contented sigh went on.
"The men of the asteroids can supply tobacco regularly, so this is becoming a rare treat for me."
Lucky said, "Did they furnish you the rest of your supplies?"
"That's right. Water, machine parts, and power pack renewals. It's an arrangement."
"And what do you do for them?" The hermit studied his cigar's lighted end.
"Not much. They use this world. They land their ships on it, and I don't report them. They don't come in here, and what they do elsewhere on the rock isn't my business. I don't want to know. It's safer that way. Men are left here sometimes, like yourself, and are picked up later. I've an idea they stop for minor repairs sometimes. They bring me in supplies in return."
"Do they supply all the hermits?"
"I wouldn't know. Maybe."
"It would take an awful lot of supplies. Where would they get that from?"
"They capture ships."
"Not enough to supply hundreds of hermits and themselves. I mean, it would take an awful lot of ships."
"I wouldn't know."
"Aren't you interested? It's a soft life you have here. But maybe the food we ate came off a ship whose crew are frozen corpses circling some other asteroid like human garbage. Do you ever think of that?"
The hermit flushed painfully. "You're getting your revenge for my having preached to you earlier. You're right. But what can I do? I didn't abandon or betray the government. They abandoned and betrayed me. My estate on Earth pays taxes. Why am I not protected, then? I registered this asteroid with the terrestrial outer world bureau in good faith. It's part of the terrestrial dominion. I have every right to expect protection against the pirates. If that's not forthcoming, if my source of supply coolly says they can bring me nothing more at any price, what am I supposed to do?"
"You might say
I could have returned to Earth, but how could I abandon all this? I have a world of my own here, my book films, the great classics that I love. I even have a copy of Shakespeare, a direct filming of the actual pages of an ancient printed book. I have food, drink, privacy. I could find nowhere as comfortable as this anywhere else in the universe. Don't think it's been an easy choice, though. I have a sub-etheric transmitter. I could communicate with Earth. I've got a little ship that could make the short haul to Ceres. The men of the asteroids know that, but they trust me. They know I have no choice, as I told you when we first met. I'm an accessory after the fact. I've helped them. That makes me legally a pirate. It would be jail, execution, probably, if I return. If not, if they free me, provided I turn state's evidence, the men of the asteroids won't forget. They would find me no matter where I went, unless I could be guaranteed complete government protection for life."
"It looks like you're in a bad way,"
said Lucky. "Am I?" said the hermit. "I may be able to get that complete protection with the proper help."
It was Lucky's turn. "I wouldn't know," he said.
"I think you would."
"I don't get you."
"Look, I'll give you a word of warning in return for help."
"There's nothing I can do." "What's your word?"
"Get off the asteroid before Anton and his men come back."
"Not on your life. I came here to join them, not to go home."
"If you don't leave, you'll stay forever. You'll stay as a dead man. They won't let you on any crew. You won't qualify, mister."
Lucky's face twisted in anger. "What in space are you asking about, old timer?"
"There it is again. When you get angry I see it plainly. You're not Bill Williams' son. What's your relationship to Lawrence Starr of the Council of Science? Are you Starr's son?" Cliffhanger! Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy the episode next Saturday. Goodbye!